Okay, with Batoul Shay Mourad, she is a winning TV pilot screenplay winner. I've known her because we did a whole workshop of her TV pilot, and I don't want to butcher the name of your pilot. I apologize. So why don't you tell people what the name of your pilot is?
Ajnabiyeh.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that properly. So,
It's okay.
is there an English
Okay.
translation?
So no, it means foreigner or outsider. But my own little nickname for the show is Ejneb. So if you want to try that one out,
Ajnaf?
Ejneb, B
Ajnaf?
at the end.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so if somebody, if the pilot's being green lighted and they ask you to change the name, would you change the name?
Man, that's gonna be a hard one, but I guess I would. I know I can't be super precious about everything, but I guess if they had like a better option, I would.
The Outsiders has been
Did that
taken.
happen already?
Sorry?
What's that?
The Outsiders
What's
has
been
been
taken?
taken, right? By like I
Oh
see a
yeah,
HUD
and like
novel. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's also not the vibe. So
Not the
I'm okay with
vibe.
the outsiders being taken.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. It has a different connotation. So so why don't you pitch what's the pilot about?
Yeah. So it kind of follows my mom's upbringing. She was born and raised in Australia, but moved back with her family to Lebanon, where she's from. During like a pretty tumultuous time in Lebanese history, Israeli occupation of the South was happening. So it's like a very politically contentious time. But I decided to kind of take
Yeah,
the
nothing has changed from
teenage
there,
drama
I guess, right?
comedy route.
Yeah,
It was getting better after 2000 and
I
then
know.
kind of just went downfall a couple years ago with the economy. And not better now with, you know,
So I apologize for interrupting
not
you.
done. Oh, no, no, you're fine. Yeah, yeah. So it's pretty prevalent now. That's still the political and economic state. And my kind of feeling was we're always seeing the Middle East in this kind of chaos, destruction, bad. It's always like family dramas or war movies. So I wanted to bring like a teen comedy angle to the Middle East, which is what the show does.
And also specifically your culture as well, I guess,
Yeah.
right? So
Arab, some teenage girls in kind of war-torn Lebanon.
can you do well? Let's it's fair to say we haven't seen this before on television.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm hoping it goes on TV before somebody else gets to it. Because I like the idea of like never been done before. But yeah, yeah. Really like sitcom, comedy, Middle East.
Yeah.
There's
I wouldn't
not.
worry too much about that because if you look at like I mean, I'll give you an architectural analogy, right? Usually the first building that comes up with a crazy idea for architecture is the building that learns from its problems. And the second building sees what that first building did and go, okay, now we can well tinker here and now I know what to do. And then you're lucky.
That's true. And there are like a couple advancements. Like Rami was like a really great show, came out a couple years ago on Hulu. Won like a bunch of like Golden Globes and stuff. So I'd love to see like different people try their hand at like comedy with this like I'd like to think uncharted group of people. Because like representation has gone a long way, but I think like there are just so many people and like somebody's got to write the story and figured I could do it instead of just waiting and screaming at my TV.
I'm going to ask you a general question
Yeah.
from someone from your culture and background. There's not much of a film history, I guess, right? Fair to say. Do you see a change in that happening? Do you see a shift like in terms of storytelling in general?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you're looking. So if you're looking at like the Netflix main screen, you're not going to find it. But if
Mhm.
you're like intentionally looking out for like new up and coming Muslim, especially like Muslim woman filmmakers, like they exist and they're doing such a great job. I was just talking to Azia Fatima, who did Americanish. She wrote Americanish, which is like such a great movie and example of like doing like family comedy in the US and talking about, immigrants and the immigrant experience. Um, Lena Khan did the Tiger, was it the Tiger Hunter or the Tiger King? Pretty sure it's Tiger Hunter. But it was like a 70s immigrant story about this guy from India coming to America. And so like they exist if you look out for them. But if you're opening Netflix or Hulu or flipping on the channel, if there's not.
Yeah, but but is there's more of a community, I guess, forming, I guess, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, totally. And it's very tight knit. MPAC, Muslim Public, what's the alliteration? Affairs Council does a
Okay,
lot they're like a Muslim consulting team who helps like other shows
yeah.
and films like make sure that if they're representing kind of Muslim characters to do it in like a pretty authentic way. So it's not huge, but the community is there and it's really strong.
I don't, this is there's also a stereotype where I'm just part of my ignorance where like they say you're a woman, you're not supposed to tell stories like this, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah,
And
there's also the thing of like, don't make them look bad or like, don't make us look bad.
yeah,
So it's like criticism kind of from the outside, which I haven't heard, but then there's also the criticism from the inside of like, well, why are the girl like in the show, like the girls curse? And like that could be something that not every Muslim Arab kind of viewer would appreciate. But there's also the point of that, like, if we're really wanting to be fully integrated into television and film, then we're not gonna have to do these like perfect portrayals of characters. It's also like a comedy, so I have no interest in like making these like perfect squeaky clean
sure, you
girls.
can't. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. And so like that's something you gotta kind of get out of your head while writing.
And no matter what, you can't make it, you're not going to make everybody happy, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
I just talked to a Muslim female like yourself, and she made a dance film, and she dances with a male, and she said she got some blowback for doing that.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah,
But it's also the idea that if you do something that's true to yourself, it'll get the right fan base and it'll like get the right audience. And
yeah,
everyone who's doesn't like it, like they can switch the channel and watch something else.
yeah. Well, you can't like you have to stay like not to sound corny, but you have to stay true to your story.
Yeah,
So these teenage girls are going to swear because that's what teenage girls, wherever they live,
exactly.
wherever the
Yes.
religion or culture is, they're going to swear, I guess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I'm not making them do like outrageous things for the like shock value, I'd
Yeah.
like to think. So it's really just about normal teenage girls in this like uncharted part of the world.
And generally speaking, if you're a teenage girl, you're going to talk about your sexual desires as well, because
Right.
that's also comes with the territory as well, I guess, right?
Which a lot of guess filmmakers get a lot of pushback when the conversations end up being about that,
Yeah.
which people get uncomfortable with. So
But that's not your story, though. Your story is it's
yeah,
not about that, right?
no, not at all. They're really pretty indifferent to boys. Um, just because they're so like myopic and like thinking about themselves. Maybe in like further seasons, but I really don't see that as being their kind of goal or their focus.
All right, so you have like very like distinct characters in your screenplay. I wouldn't mind just talking about each one of them individually. I'm curious where you got the idea for each individual character. So do you mind going through the? I don't think I've ever done this before. But I'm so curious about because I did the whole reading of it. We did the whole
Yeah.
reading of it. I didn't do anything, but they did the whole reading of it. The actors and they all found their voice within your
Oh, they're
writing.
so
So
great. Yeah.
so tell me about each character in the script.
Yeah, so the main character is Miriam. Her real name is Miriam, but she splits it as her kind of like controlled form of rebellion. I remember one night just thinking, oh, if you put a space between Miriam, you get Mary M. And I thought that was like such a funny thing that like a young girl could do. It's like how Ladybird was like, don't call me Christine, call me Ladybird. That, but in like a smaller, controlled way. She's like really angry at the world. I like to think of Miriam as like me at my worst at 16 times like 5 or 10
Okay.
and anger at the world, thinks everyone's out to get her, kind of inherits, I'll get to this later, but like her mom's paranoia, feels like again like an outsider in what's supposed to be the homeland because she grew up in Australia, comes back to Lebanon, and everyone sees her as this like Westerner. And really is just like no interest in fitting in or getting along with other people and kind of like takes pride in like not fitting in. And then there's her twin sister, Layal. My mom's a twin. And the thing about like twins on TV is that they always kind of make them seem like just duplicates. But in my experience, twins are like very different, like because they're twins. So she's kind of equally as cunning and scheming, but she's like quieter and a bit more apathetic, cooler. gets away with things that Miriam can't, because Miriam is such a big mouth and kind of outs herself whenever she tries to do something. So Miriam is, Lael is kind of the cooler contrast of her. And then we have Sue or Sumaya, their younger sister. I like to think of her as this kind of like crossroads between, because she is so much younger, she could kind of follow suit with tradition and kind of be a part of community and know what it feels like to belong, or follow in her sister's footsteps of kind of enjoying being on the outside. And so she's like this like really innocent voice, kind of is like on one foot in one world, one foot in the other, but like loves and is so loyal to her sisters. And we have their friend Noor, last of like kind of the friend group. She's trying to like rebrand herself after kind of her troublemaking history in Australia, comes to Lebanon, trying to be like a good Muslim girl, trying to do everything right, but her friends kind of just always drag her back down to their level. So there's like some conflict there too, which plays out in the pilot. And then Yusuf, he's like a Charlie Brown, I think of him as like, so like slightly pathetic, but like really lovable, like gentle boy next door. His parents have like a really tumultuous relationship. He's based off of like an actual family member who he found out that his parents like were getting divorced for like the third time on the playground. And then he comes home and he's like, Mom, is this true? She's like, what? No, don't worry about it. Go away. So kind of represents, I say, and there's a lot of nostalgia in the show, and not just because it's set in the 90s, but because it kind of reminisces on a time when before the patriarchy kind of like bullied the gentleness out of boys and shamed the shamelessness out of girls. And so the girls are going to be very shameless, say and do whatever they think, very impulsive, very troublemaking. And Yusuf is this kind of like, before the world kind of toughens up boys, what it means to just, he has this like huge sense of responsibility, and feels all this pressure from his family. So there's a real contrast between the female characters and then Yusuf.
So okay, so you said in the 90s,
Yes,
like
nineteen
in a
ninety eight.
way, it kind of takes away from what's happening now. So there's no like parallel like to what the world is now, I guess, right? So that's smart
Yeah.
from that
So
point of
no
view.
phones, no social
Yeah.
media. Kind of my personal ick when I see that kind of touched on like a show or movie, like having you have to integrate the whole phone and social media thing. So it's a nice
Yeah.
escapism of
But
that.
also too, like there's no like present day history, like present day current events happening that the people are,
Yeah, that you have to like keep up with.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And basically, would you like, is it a fair thing to pitch it as like the girls for Muslims, the TV show Girls for Muslims?
Oh, that is so interesting. I watched a couple episodes of um, Girls for Muslims, but like teenagers.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Younger and then like in the Middle East. Yeah.
And
That's
they're
a
trying to figure out who they are.
interesting comp. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because it's a coming of age of all
Yes.
four of these girls,
Yeah.
right?
One of the fellowships that I was applying to was like, how do you see the series ending? And like in March 25th, 2000, the last IDF soldier leaves southern Lebanon. And it's this like huge liberation day, and there's a parade, and Lebanese people celebrate it every year. And I wanted the series to end there, and for that to be a moment where Miriam is like, oh, the world is so much bigger than myself, and that there was this whole thing going on behind me, but I was kind of closing myself off to it. So kind of like a bittersweet kind of, she's seeing the world, but also like I guess my intention with the show is that you're kind of rooting for her ignorance throughout and her
Yeah,
kind of apathy towards the world, because we can no longer be apathetic towards the world now that we're like adults.
yeah.
Um, but when you're a teenager, that you kind of do have that kind of visor. Um, you're only kind of thinking about yourself. So I really see it ending with like the end of her innocence.
Yeah, we all experience that day when our childhood ends, right? So,
Yeah,
and sometimes it's people when they're 10 years old, sometimes it's people when they're 30 years old, right? It depends
totally.
on the individual product journey, I guess. But yeah, there's something so profound in this story. And it's like, yeah, you've really fleshed out these four characters, and they and like you said, we don't really know this world, but we do because we understand teenagers, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, there's like a specificness to it, and then there's a universality that
Yeah.
I'd like to think once it starts playing, it feels very familiar.
And there's also history to learn.
Yes, yes, totally. I was a history major and like history teaching. I was supposed to be a teacher. So like I nerd out over any chance to kind of dive into like a different time period and culture and region. So like I'm always doing like different research on, and it's super specific and it's not the easiest to find, but like 1998 Southern Lebanon, like historical events, because I'd like real events to kind of intersect with like different
Yeah,
episodes.
100%. Yeah.
It's really fun.
And the Western world knows nothing about, I'm being general, but the Western world knows nothing about this, right? So
Yeah, totally, totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
I
even
think
for my generation who grew up in the 90s. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally. And there's going to be like a lot of like pop culture references. So it is very 90s and like the fashion is going to be there. So, and people love that nostalgia bait thing anyway. So
What was the Western influence like in terms of music, fashion, movies in during that time in Lebanon?
Alanis Morissette gets name dropped in the first episode.
Yeah.
It's overalls and baggy clothes and Friends and Seinfeld. Oh my God, I remember my mom
So you're
was
watching, you get to watch that. You're able to watch that.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
Seinfeld. Okay.
So TV was kind of like 3, 4, 5 years behind. So you would watch like old episodes of it. So you're never completely up to date. So I guess the cultural zeitgeist would be like 1995 or like 1994
Okay.
in 1998. Yeah.
Gotcha. So then, yeah, Seinfeld was in its heyday, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Friends just starting out in 1995,
Totally. Yeah.
right? And then, yeah, latest more said, take a little pill.
Oh yeah, you're Canadian. Must be like
Well,
a
I'm,
huge
I'm
legend.
also a human, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, who's brought up, who's in his 40s and was brought up in the 90s. So,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about angst. It's angst music, right? Like
Yeah.
rebellion,
Yeah. And I
culture.
like to think that's reflected in like the characters too, and like how angry and bitter they are. And yeah.
Even though historically, I mean, you're the history major, not me, but the 90s were a pretty good decade overall.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't as many wars. There was wars, but it wasn't as many wars. The economy was generally pretty good all over the world, like so everybody seemed to be okay. But then
Especially the way we look back at it now, like right before 9/11 and like 2001, and it kind of does get remembered as a
sure, yeah, the
good thing.
90s ended, like talk about when things end, and 90s ended
Yeah.
on September 11th, right? So it's funny because I was just talking about this with somebody yesterday because my birthday's September 10th.
Oh
And
gosh.
in the night, my childhood and the 90s ended on September 10th,
How
2001.
old were you?
I was 25.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, what a strange thing. Where were you? I'm curious. I'm always curious where people were.
I was at a TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival. I was at a TIFF party
Wow.
on September 10th, and it was like a big, huge shindig bar party, like free drinks. And I don't drink anymore, but I was like really, I was really going after it. And I had a 7 a.m. Call the next morning on a film set called Soul Food, on a TV show called Soul Food. That it's a New York show, but they're filming it in Toronto, like they do a lot of shows. And I was so hungover, and basically I was sitting on a porta potty. I was working locations. I was sitting on a porta potty, and then one of the TADs or the third ADs said, "Oh yeah, did you know that somebody just a plane just crashed into the World Trade Center?" I'm like, "Oh, that's so crazy," because the first thing you're thinking is that, oh, that basically like so there was a mistake, right? They must have made a mistake. And
Accident
then
or something, right?
yeah, and then 10 minutes later, he goes, "Oh, the second one just hit the towers." So most of the crew were especially the cast,
Oh
were
my
from
God.
New York City. So they were freaking out, and like understandably so. And then so they just shut down the filming of the film of the show. And then I walked down. So I was young. I don't know if you know Toronto, but I was in Yonge and Bloor, which is like the downtown core of Toronto. And traffic was stopped, and everybody's watching. There was like a monitor, kind of like Times Square, kind of like videos, right? And basically everybody just stopped and was watching the news. And then that's when I knew, like, I was so hungover, and that's when I knew the world ended, right? Not the world ended, the era has ended, is right from there, right? So
Yeah. Oh my God. Can't even imagine. Crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was at the World Trade Center because I went to school in New York City. I actually
Oh,
was visiting somebody. I was visiting a girl, and we were on top of the World Trade Center in April of that year
Oh my
at
God.
the same time. Like that, we went up at about 8:30, and we went on top of the World Trade Center like 5 months before.
Oh, that's crazy. Oh my God.
Sorry, well, I think I talked too much. So what
No,
about
no.
you? Could tell you could tell your
I was
story.
born 2 weeks afterwards.
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
it just hearing people's stories of like it's so crazy how vividly people always remember where they were, what happened, and
yeah.
who they were with, and yeah.
Yeah, but your era is COVID, right? So my era is like there's always like Generation X. There's always significant moments in every generation, right?
I
So
would think
you're
of mine as like Trump being elected was like such a strange. I
yeah.
remember the next day in school, like it was raining in New York, and school was so weird the next day, and like that was one of those things that like, oh my God, no one could believe it, and characterized like it was the entirety of my high school years. So very weird. And then
He
COVID, so
and they
too.
were both there.
Yeah.
Clinton and Trump were both in New York City when that
Oh, yeah.
happened, and it might it might happen again.
It's
So which
it's
is
weird.
crazy,
All
right?
things aren't great.
Oh,
Hopefully it's better in Canada.
well, no, yeah, it is.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it is. Yeah.
awesome.
But your vote, that's not that your vote doesn't matter, but it's like New York, Biden's going to win that state. It's the other states that we have to worry about. So
It's Michigan and it's Pennsylvania, really, when you come down to it. So
yeah.
it's yeah.
Well, Fetterman was
Anyway,
on Bill Maher on Friday, and he says that he guaranteed that they're going to win Pennsylvania. So
I'm pretty sure Trump's gonna win Michigan. So
you think so?
100%. Arabs are so mad at Joe Biden right now.
But okay, so the question is that if you want to go down this rabbit hole, the
Yes, yes.
question that you have to ask Trump at the debates is that what's he going to do about Israel? Because I don't think he cares, right?
But he has a lot of people in his inner circle who do care and who are invested.
So what is he's going to go with the Arabs? He's going to go on the Arab side to get the votes?
That's such a good question. In front of the Arabs, he's gonna go with the Arabs. In front of the
No, that's what you ask him at the
yeah.
debate, right?
For sure, sure. When the question inevitably comes up, he's gonna say, I would have done a better job. That's all he's gonna say. If I were president, this wouldn't have happened. Whatever that means to him.
He's going to sidestep the question
Totally.
because
Yeah, yeah.
the Jews and the Israelis are mad at Biden too, right? Maybe even
Yeah.
more so.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like they should be pretty happy with him. That's
No.
crazy.
See, it's all about the lens that you see the world from,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. The question is that like in Michigan, do you sit out and not vote for Biden because you're mad at Biden, but inevitably that'll help Trump? Or do you begrudgingly vote for Biden?
Which I don't understand is that it's more than just one thing. Like there's women's reproductive rights, there's
For sure.
education, there's healthcare. Like you're just gonna not vote for because
I
of
agree.
one
I
issue.
think if I were in Michigan, I would vote for Biden,
Yeah.
but I understand anyone who's that angry at a guy who like took your pain and called you anti-Semitic and because you were mad that your heritage and your ancestors are being slaughtered. Like that's crazy to me that he kind of took and weaponized people's pain and agony and said, no, it's fake. You're just doing it because you're anti-Semitic. And it just, yeah, no, the whole rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah.
But I would vote for Biden, but it's really painful when kind of your country is being responsible for the pain that's happening in your homeland. Which is why I wrote a comedy, because this stuff gets really sad.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, yeah, that's the whole point we're trying to make is that
Yeah.
basically this is there's still, but at the same time, where history is going to go with your pilot, right? So
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah.
so you can kind of navigate within the history, right? So
Because everything's kind of like done and complete.
yeah,
Whereas the show's happening now, oh my God, what a pain that would be. Every year there's just like so much more history getting made
yeah, yeah.
with the
So
region.
it's smart. So basically, you're in this like smart, innocent time, like not innocent time, but you're in this smart time where like
Understandable.
yeah, an understandable time where there's like do you want to talk about like where the script's going to go from there? Because we end up talking because you end up doing a consult with this gentleman, Marco, he seemed to help your script out. And then we
Yeah.
did a whole reading at our festival, the workshop. And it seems like your script is ready. It looks like it's ready.
I'd
So
like to think so. Yeah, like, oh my God, after the table read, I went away with like just the best notes, and the draft afterwards was just like, I mean, every draft is going to be like the best draft yet, but really just great feedback. It's amazing to like, it's one thing to get written feedback, and it's another thing to like look at people's faces. Where are they laughing? Where are they not laughing for a long time? Where are people like chuckling and smirking? And it's really great to get that kind of live feedback. And yeah,
yeah,
I'd
and
like to
so
think that was
but
right.
but at the same time, I don't know if you did you rewatch it again or
Oh yeah, yeah. Or like I made it shorter and like rewatch like certain parts of it and kind of reread through the script. So it's a really great resource to have.
so then the next step you said you're gonna start pitching it?
Yeah. Hopefully in Moonshot pilot accelerator. We're gonna like workshop our pitches, make it to like a 10-minute pitch. They invite like speech coaches and like showrunners and executives to kind of hear our pitches. And then we have this thing called Pitch Week where people from Netflix and HBO and Hulu and wherever else come and listen to us pitch, and hopefully it ends with something. I'd love to end up in like a writer's room within like a year from now.
100%. And then so do you have any other things that you've written, like kind of to showcase your talent besides the pilot?
Yeah, I've written another comedy pilot set in modern day Australia, Arab family, written a children's TV show, the way that like kind of wore the Sesame Workshop fellowship. So it's like a 15-minute episode. It's about feminist pirates, so it's a lot of fun and like imaginative and different for me. And now I'm working on a comedy feature.
Okay. So you're working on that right now?
Yeah, it's a modern high school adaptation of historical events. So the same way that like Easy A is based on like Scarlet Letter, what is it? She's the Man is based on like a Shakespeare play. It's going to be like that, but with history, and which is like a never-ending story engine because there's no IP address. Like you don't have to buy anyone the right of anything.
Yeah.
You can just keep creating like films. So it would be like the Protestant Reformation, but like high school, or like Athens versus Sparta wars, but high school.
Okay.
Anyway,
No, but I don't, for the EZA, did they have to get rights for Scarlet Letter for
no,
EZA?
because it's like that old, but like any kind of like modern
Oh,
adaptation
gotcha,
of
gotcha.
anything.
Because
Yeah, yeah,
that standard, that's after 100 years is that
yeah,
standard. Yeah,
yeah.
gotcha.
Like Winnie the Pooh, for example, just became public domain.
Did it really?
Yeah, and they made like a really strange horror movie with it. So they were like, yes, it's public domain. Let's do something weird.
But that's
Yeah.
not even 100 years though, is it? Is Winnie the
I
Pooh
don't think
that
it's
long?
how long is public domain?
I thought it was 100 years. I can't believe that's like, how did that even happen with Winnie the Pooh?
95 years after publication or 70 years after the death of the author. Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay. So basically, so either the author died.
Um,
So yeah, 2020, 1921, I guess. I didn't know Winnie
yeah.
the Pooh was that old.
Right. 2022 became public domain.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's also scary too, right? So
Yeah. Because anything can have to. I'm waiting for the day that Charlie Brown becomes public domain because I love that world so much. And like, how cool would it be to just like do anything with those characters and iconography and
yeah, those old like their old little cartoon thing episodes still hold up today after like
oh,
6 years.
sure. You'd think it wouldn't because it was like the 50s and 60s, but man, they're
Yeah.
so good. Yeah.
So you're working on that, then so you're kind of like, it seems like you're in this little, you have this like kind of comedy within it from historical perspectives, teenage
Yeah, that's kind of
perspective.
my niche, I would say, is like
Yeah.
comedy, teenagers, history, or like the three things that I like to intertwine together.
Did you ever ask yourself why teenagers? Why you like writing for teenagers?
Um, I always loved like early 2000s dramas. So like Gilmore Girls and One Tree Hill and Gossip Girl later, for to a later extent. Dawson's Creek was so great. And like
That's
Yeah.
before your time though, right?
It was, but
Yeah.
like that's thanks to streaming,
Yeah.
which is so awesome. Which is that you can just like dive into this like archive, which is amazing. And I also like I had a really interesting teenage years, and I think it's like a psychological thing to want to like rewrite it, but like as the writer, literally. And I also like I got my degree in teaching middle and high school. So like they're just so interesting. Teenagers are so interesting in a way that like adults kind of aren't.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's like such a and also like the teenage fan base is awesome and so loyal and so passionate. So to write a show where you get that kind of a passionate fan base would be awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then of course comedy is that because it seems like you're kind of hitting that tone where it's still serious,
Yeah.
but it's funny, right? Where it's not like a straight out like I don't even think they even make these anymore. I think a little bit, but these straight out sitcoms where like
Yeah.
it's the characters are not growing, the characters are not really developing, but it's we're gonna have some good plots, but it's out for humor, right?
Yes. Like the episodic kind of I mean, like a lot of shows are favoring like the serialized kind of like
Yeah.
10 episode plots, which is great and everything. But man, I just loved the every episode kind of. I love the idea that you could just plop in and watch any episode of Everybody Loves Raymond or Everybody Hates Chris or The Middle is such a great show. And I'd like to bring that back because I know like binge watching it's advantageous to do the serialized, but it's such a nice great form of TV to kind of just make these kind of like isolated episodes and
Standalone. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you brought up like Friends and Seinfeld. That's
Yeah.
there are kind of like that Ross and Rachel are going to get together, but
Yeah.
you can watch any season, and it doesn't really matter, right? So
Totally. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. The creators of Seinfeld had this phrase, it was called like no hugging, no learning.
yeah,
And it's the idea that they didn't want any kind of like sentimentality or kind of like, that third act thing where they start like hugging and like learning lessons. And like they also do it in like everybody Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
yeah.
So just that kind of like cynicism, irreverence is kind of really the tone I'm going for.
They de-evolve. I call it de-evolving. They it's the
Yeah.
opposite. They don't learn. They don't
Yes.
like get better. They actually get worse.
Yeah, which is so much fun. Why would you want to watch somebody get better? I don't know. It kind of feeds the part of yourself that doesn't want to get better.
Yeah, but we need a little balance though, right? You can't watch it. Yeah, so but I think these characters are I don't want to say love like they're lovable, but I hate that's an overused word, but they're definitely interesting to watch. That's for sure, and they're likable. I guess that's you want to watch them because they
Yeah.
seem like good people.
Yeah. And they kind of like speak to the part of you that feels like the anger and the resentment and all that stuff. But there's a part in the pilot, I wanted to make sure that Miriam was like a little redeemable, where her sister, the younger sister, is getting kind of pushed around by other girls. And she comes in like a protective older sister. So just like making sure there are those spots where you're like, oh, like I can root for her.
Well, I wish you the ultimate best of success. I've had you on for way too long,
Yeah.
but you're amazing, and this is a ready for. I never really say this, but this is a pilot that's ready to go. And like you said, it's perfect timing to where we're at. We don't see these stories anymore, and like you said, the teenage world is always going to be popular and prevalent, and we need to see different worlds, different cultures. That's how we learn as a species. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All
Really
right. Well,
appreciate
thank
it
you
while
so
I was on
much.
this.
Don't be a stranger. Let me know what's going on, and I wish you all the best of success.
Bye. Thank you.